So we're going to talk about no, we're going to talk about one important thing today, and that is, of course, the rehabilitation that is probably going to happen of Rishi Sunak. But before we have to talk about the rehabilitation of Rishi Sunak, you have to understand the rehabilitation of Theresa May. Make no mistake, go back in time and look at what happened to Theresa May. Theresa May got absolutely destroyed. She took a poison chalice, almost assuming the leadership after David Cameron in a Conservative leadership contest where all the contenders suddenly went, actually, I think it's going to be a bit of a mess, so I'm just bowing out. And that, of course, then left Theresa May. And to be fair to Theresa May, her backstop idea, while it would not have solved every single Brexit issue or resolved all the arguments or anything like that, at least it was somewhat of a competent, sensible-ish idea. But of course, Brexiteers couldn't even countenance that, so she had to go. But there was a lot more wrong with Theresa May than just that. But I will say, Theresa May had a very, very much a poison chalice given to her. But you've got to take Theresa May not just as that period, but as her entire tenure. Remember, the whole reason why the asylum system is as bad as it is, why the Labour government are still having to try and sort out this mess, is because of Theresa May. She's the one who created the harsh environment of sending around vans in, high levels of asylum areas, telling people to go home and etc. She was the very start of that. She destroyed the Home Office, the applications center, where these people where we had a very good system and were getting people through. Of course, you can't have that, so the system had to be destroyed. Ultimately, of course, you had a successor, of course, Boris Johnson. And as I think we are probably about to see with Rishi Sunak, you are about to see, well, Boris was absolutely awful, but wasn't May actually quite good? And that ultimately, I think, is what's going to happen now. You're going to get Kemi Badenoch, and she's going to be absolutely terrible. But Conservatives will then go, yeah, Kemi Badenoch was bad, but wasn't Rishi Sunak good? And you will steadily see over the next couple of years, I can guarantee you, a slow but steady rehabilitation of Rishi Sunak to say, well, he wasn't as bad as we say he was. But bear in mind, the reason why we are doing this video now is because at this moment in time, a lot of Conservatives are not buying that argument that Rishi Sunak was actually better than, shall we say, they are being told. So today we are not going to go over an article in Conservative Home. Instead, we are immediately going to be jumping straight in the comments to just show you that at this moment in time, Conservatives are not buying the hype that Rishi Sunak should be remembered a lot more fondly than people actually judge him. And the Conservative judgment of him at the moment was far, far too harsh. So, before we go jumping into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there is the Pony Club down below as well. So, let's go jumping into this. So, this article in particular, written by the new editor of Conservative Home, is basically it's a complete rewriting of Rishi Sunak, trying to make him better than he was. Really, he was just such a good guy, was Rishi Sunak, and people just didn't see that. Doesn't matter if you are a good guy. Being a competent prime minister, I would say, was far more important. And ultimately, that's what he failed at. And ultimately, that is what people do not see. So, let's jump in to some of these people, because there are some people who are saying, well, like this one, instantly, a fair analysis, but as for defeat, I do not believe that. At the time when he took over, anyone could have done much better. I do think someone else would have done much better. There's someone here saying, "Oh well, he did conduct himself admirably, but the COVID stuff, his criticism of the budget was all right, but you know, I am not buying it 100% fully." Someone else seeing said here, should bring back Penny Mordaunt. Um, Someone else says here, indeed, a fair analysis is required. Like John Major, Sunak is probably a nice guy, but no more acting, of course, in denial. This analysis should incorporate the creating of the Tory party disaster. Left or right, it doesn't matter. Sunak didn't do a thing. And of course, he did fail at his most important job as to have to win the general election. So let's start being fairer on him, blaming him solely for disaster and bringing in the upcoming economic nightmare. Yeah, people aren't going to be that too happy about him, I think. Someone else said, since we'll see someone else writing an article about Sunak from a far more realistic standpoint to counterbalance this far more stomach churning hagiography. I remember Sunak as the prime minister who insisted that his ascension was the only way to save MPs and win the next election. And then he lost those MPs their job in the worst defeat since the reign of Victoria. Um, yeah, we forget that whole Tory party skirmish that took place. Um, his tenure, of course, now ultimately failed to get to grip, not just the boats, but every other issue now blighting the country: housing supply, energy costs, net zero, public sector productivity. He made very positive virtue of his intention, but to do nothing. Then he did nothing. Yep, exactly. He did absolutely nothing. Rishi Sunak was the ultimate do nothing prime minister. Um, Except now, of course, very trite, self indulgent nonsense about chessboards and maths till 18, and of course, banning smoking. Politically, of course, his tenure was marked by unprecedented gracefulness in now dealing with his conservative predecessors. He attacked, of course, Truss and Boris in a way that those other MPs did not attack their predecessors, because it was never about the wider Tory party. It was about trying to cement his leadership. Again, very true. You may remember in the early days of his leadership, the shadows of Boris and Truss were very, very much still there. Truss, not as so much, because she had been very much pushed into the political wilderness, but Boris was still there. Remember, that previous Tory leadership election was expected to be a showdown between Boris and Sunak, to which the Conservative Party membership would have voted with gleeful abandon to bring back Boris Johnson. And that's why the MPs had to gather around Sunak to cement his win, and why you did see Sunak on occasion mention and attack ways, not directly, but indirectly, certainly Boris and Truss as well. So people often try to palm the defeat off to Truss and Boris, which is very odd, given that they were not running for another term as prime minister. Truss absolutely did have this, and so did Boris as well. They had massive negativity issues, so you can not palm off the defeat completely, of course, to Truss and Boris, but they do bear, some responsibility. The polling does actually absolutely contradict this. I've never seen any polling to counteract that, though. Sunak, of course, the small bounce when he took the reins after the mini-budget shambles, and from there was at least the now remorseless downslide, briefly reversed by starting to make good noises about net zero, but he lost and he failed to now follow through with anything except stopping a mythical meat ban. Sunak now wholly owns the poll slide and the election defeat, made worse now by his own catastrophic timing. He's very lucky that his reputation has been now eclipsed by a prime minister even worse than he was. If we're talking about Keir Starmer, so far, I think he has a far better reputation because, as this guy pointed out, Sunak has done nothing. Right? This Labour government, so far, has done more than Rishi Sunak's entire premiership. So to say that Keir Starmer is somehow worse than Rishi Sunak does not countenance the fact that Rishi Sunak pretty much did nothing on this. Um, Someone else here, Sunak is already forgotten. He will now see how the Conservative Party develops in opposition. Either of the two candidates will now appeal to the hard right, especially the culturally hard right. They will now further put off the centre right, and those voters who accept those with now the Conservative vote on auto renewal hoovered up to be hoovered even up by Labour or the Lib Dems or even non-voters. Reform seems to now have died a death. A lot of the voters seem very now pleased with the perceived direction of the Conservative Party. A reform, now a disinterested leader, and a schism now opening between Tommy Robinson followers and, of course, more mainstream cultural hard rightists. Therein lies now an opportunity for the Conservative Party, not morally, but at least electorally in 5 or 10 years. Someone else says here, I struggle with anyone who gives him a description of as a decent man. Whilst Chancellor, he took a decision now to deny parity of support to 2.9 million people, the ONS figures over the pandemic. At least 100 plus Conservative MPs and a very small majority, the number of voters now thrown under the bus by him in their constituencies. Polling showed that at least 63% of those actively attacking him voted Conservative in 2019. From their views in various campaign websites, it is very clear that maybe 2% did at the last election. The Labour Party at least support 22% in 2019 stayed at 22%. So for anyone wondering about the fact that about 4 in 10 voters did not bother to turn out, did not have to look far. Rishi Sunak, a decent man. For those who lost businesses, homes, and marriages, might wish to disagree. Yeah, true. Rishi Sunak may have helped a bit in the pandemic, but if you were self-employed, you were screwed. You were screwed on that. That is very true. Someone else said, very good, but I do not think you give enough prominence to the role incompetence actually played on our defeat. Rushing was very badly failed by our MPs who did not fight a single unit. This gave Medulla, I think Starmer, I think he needed a lot more ammunition. There was a lot the way the government was awful, but I do not understand this wholly obvious incompetent government and a divided party sank us now with the electorate. Add in what must mean an awful public relations team, and it is absolutely implausible now a bad date for the election, and we had a perfect storm all against us. It will take a very long time to erase these now public perceptions of us, and I cannot get out of my mind that Rishi was at the helm long enough to bear some culpability. But Boris, how dare you let us down? Someone else said, judge him on his combined record as Chancellor and then PM. For instance, his support now for mass immigration at HTM led directly to his defeat later. His COVID QE and his Chancellor led to the disastrous inflation and interest rate hikes that did him in later. His opposition to Rwanda as Chancellor also now sewed it down on the line on that. On the plus side, he's not much. He sold the UK and Northern Ireland out of the Windsor framework and claimed it as a success. He made his own bed, and we all now suffer the result. So, as you can see, at this moment in time, Conservatives are still not going to accept this new change, at least at the moment. But maybe it will happen later. Like I say, it did happen with Theresa May. It took some time, but her image in the Conservative Party is a lot different than it used to be. Certainly when she was PM, and certainly in the couple of years after, there's been a lot more, shall we say, nicer rethinking. Obviously, having been followed by Boris and then by Liz Truss, and it wasn't really until Liz Truss that they actually started to really look back and go, "Oh well, Theresa May, she wasn't that bad," considering how they were all treating her. Again, giving up probably very similar comments as you're probably seeing here about Rishi. Will opinions change about Rishi Sunak? Maybe. I don't think so. Someone else said here, he was just not PM material. I'm afraid that since Boris, the party has made mistake after mistake in electing a leader. Really, no one in the current offering has any caliber or even magic of electoral appeal. We have to accept the reality. So now a question now of making the best of it. We need someone who can at least cut through the doom. Given the leadership, I hope within the next 5 years of Starmer ahead of us, we will need a lot of that. So on balance, my view is it will have to be Jarek, but he will need to demonstrate this very quickly to keep reform at bay. Take a grip of the parliamentary party and at least establish an appeal with the electorate. That is a lot, but we do hope. Jarek will not cut through. Neither will Kemi Badenoch in so many worse ways. Yeah, someone else says here, yeah, this will be the last one. I don't deny that he's a decent man, but for me, he presided over a government that fiddled while Rome burned, doing absolutely nothing to rein the opportunistic greed of the energy providers, doing nothing to grow the economy through Brexit or the export drive, doing absolutely nothing to fix the dysfunctional, lazy civil service, the economy, and people have now been bleeding to death on our watch. We completely squandered all the public money, contracts, and the impact now of corporate greed that we should have tackled now at the source. Then he called a GE just as now we were turning the corner. And then we had hundreds of constituencies with no established candidates. A completely suicidal error of judgment that will be now refused to admit or even rescind. His final performance at the dispatch box showed me metal that would have been very helpful in the previous 2 years. Completely water under the bridge. Time to move on. What we need now is ideas, grit and determination. Proof that we are now fit to govern. Proof that we actually care about people. Proof that we are not afraid of big corporations. And we need a new constitution that gives members and associations and affiliations enough influence to stop any more bad policies, candidates, and decisions, or now the endless round of leadership overthrows. We are about to get a good leader. You're not, but we'll see what happens tomorrow, or shall we say, in the next couple of hours when it's announced. We must now, of course, back that person to the hilt. We must not wash our dirty linen in public, but listen to our foot soldiers and build back better. The next GE will not be 5 years away, but we must be ready. Someone else said the defeat is and was down to Rishi Sunak or others, where he took the wrong/bad advice. Parliament, of course, did the major part to blame for this, and their blunders, and his advisors came close to second. So, yeah. Someone else says here, history, I think, will be kind to Rishi. As this article points out, he's a very decent man, clearly an highly intelligent and charming one. But I still wonder if he decided to cease being a successful financier and instead become a dud politician. For all his decency and intelligence, his grasp of politics was poor, and he was not a leader, not an inspirational figure. It would also be at least a grave injustice to say that he led the Conservatives now to a disaster. Just happening to be holding on a steaming hot parcel when the music stopped. Perhaps at some point a seat in the Lords might come his way, if we still have a House of Lords by that time. Yeah, they are not buying. They are not at this time at the moment buying this attempted rehabilitation of Rishi Sunak. Maybe it will happen later down the line, as I said, as with Theresa May. Fundamentally, the Conservative, or at least Conservative Party members, think very, very differently of Theresa May. I don't. I think you should remember her time as Home Office should be taken as part of that. But I think when you look at the whole Brexit struggles, given the fact that she did somewhat present a somewhat sensible and workable idea and was, thrown out of it because the hardliners didn't want her, well, you should also look at that, I think, in the whole combined with her career as well. I think you look at Rishi Sunak's entire, political career since 2015, in 2015 and by 2022, he was prime minister. That's a big monumental rise, but it was one that he could not fulfill. He was not a leader. He did not show any backbone. He did nothing really when it came to it. He talked a big game, but did nothing. If you want proof, just look how little bills actually passed through Parliament in his 2-year tenure, and look at how many bills have now passed through Parliament since Keir Starmer took over. Parliament's actually doing something. I know, shock horror. Parliament doing something, but they are. And it's more active now than the time of Rishi Sunak. So, will Rishi Sunak one day be remembered very differently by Conservative members? I don't think so. Maybe it might happen. Maybe there might be some who might want to try and change maybe Rishi Sunak's political image. Maybe one day he wants to make a political comeback. Who knows? But I don't think he will ever be remembered very, very fondly by Conservatives. I do not think that will ever happen. But who knows? Who knows what the future may bring? So, as always, let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.